So, hi everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Just to give you a very quick, brief introduction to who this face is over here. I'm Anshika Varma, and I run a small initiative called Offset Projects, where we try and uh, read books collectively, whether it's in the physical act of coming together and creating pop-up libraries, whether it's going to schools, universities, and creating library periods for students, or uh, just experiments in publishing and paper making through workshops and conversations. So we've decided to take our physical conversation space, which is Guftgu, and go online in, to make sense of what's happening right now. And I'm super happy to have started this series with Rohit Saha, who's with us today.
Hi.
And Rohit is a photographer and an ex-student of NID. In fact, the book that we are discussing today, 1528, started off as part of Rohit's final thesis project during his course. And I think it started off with something with a different intention and has now become a much broader subject than maybe what even he was prepared for at that point in time.
Yeah.
And we're going to basically have a few questions, and I'll let Rohit kind of take stage for telling us more about the book, about his process, about what he was thinking, about what he was confused about or not. And in the end, we'll try and see if we have time to take a few questions from all of you. There is, I think, there's a Q&A section that's there on the seminar chat. And if you can just put in your questions over there, we'll make sure to address them as we, wrap up the talk. I also want to give a massive shout out to the Chennai Photo Binale Foundation, and they've actually helped me set this whole thing up because I can't understand much of it otherwise.
Like a night.
So thank you guys, and shall we begin? I think we can. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So Rohit, like we were talking about it right
Yeah.
now. Uh, this whole idea of kind of 1528 is what it is today. But I think
Yeah.
when I look at the book, for me, a big chunk of it, how I understand it, is you kind of making sense of the politics and the reality of a state that not many of us in India also know about. Its
Mm-hmm.
history, and it's kind of like, even in our school subjects or
Yeah.
histories or educational formats,
Yeah.
um, it's always put in as, oh, the Seven Sisters is like
Yeah.
this
And the
entity, this
together
like,
thing.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
and so one doesn't really grow up being very aware of the intricacies of the politics that
Yeah.
exists over there.
Yeah.
And I wanted to talk to you about the same thing, about what initiated you to kind of start this journey.
Yeah.
And maybe, you can
Yeah.
start off and then we can kind of
Yeah.
go
So
along.
it was, as you said, it was my last year of NID. I was preparing from a graduation project. It was somewhere around mid-August 2016.
Right.
And I came across this newspaper which read Irom Sharmila breaks a 16-year-long hunger strike, repealing AFSPA. So I think that headline actually struck me, and I was like, okay, 16-year long hunger strike. I had no idea about what's happening in my own country.
Hmm.
And that is when I started beginning about, knowing about what has happened. So
Right.
what had happened was in the year 2000, 2nd November, three Assam rifle vehicle convoy was crossing Malom village when an unidentified insurgent group attacked them and toppled the first vehicle. No army was killed, but in retaliation to that, the army officials got down and started firing at the people waiting at the bus stand or walking towards the bus stand, killing 10 people right there.
Mhm.
Along with that, 45 people were dragged out from their house and interrogated by the paramilitary. During that time, Irom was 28-year-old, and she, along with 20 other women under human rights activist Pablo Loitong, were reaching out to families, collecting data from such victim families in order to prepare a petition which they would submit to the Supreme Court. On 2 days after this incident happened, Iram decided to begin her hunger strike.
Right.
Soon after that, Manipur police took her into custody because it's unlawful to commit suicide under Section 309 of the Indian Penal Code. Her health deteriorated, and in order to keep her alive, the police started giving her food through nasogastric intubation. This kept on for 16 long years. On not seeing much change happening of what she was doing, she decided to break a fast. And that is when she decided to run run for election and address the same cause but through a different way. And that was what I wanted to tell about. Okay, this has happened 20 years, 16 years ago, and today she's breaking a fast. And coincidentally, 9th of August was the same week when I came across the newspaper, and that is how it I chose that okay, I need to know about. So this project was basically a way to inform myself about who Irom Sharmila was, what happened 16 years back, to talk about her journey to the election for the next year.
And you at that point had also decided to focus on
Yeah,
right that
because
that
of the
your
fact it was NID's end exam, we had a given time, so we had to finish it before like.
hmm,
So my idea was to stick my project to just to Malom Massacre, discuss the village about the scene there, then and reflect back or rather follow Irom Sharmila on 100 days of her election, to
okay,
her election.
okay.
Now, and
And then
also,
sorry, just
yeah,
at this stage, it was not a book. It was not. There was no
no, it
objective in
was nothing. I wasn't prepared of a form of it. I was looking at it as a documentary project, looking at you have to address this incident which has happened 16 years back to talk about today.
right.
And during that time, I think what I had in my mind was for me, Malom massacre was the worst that had happened to Manipur. When I landed.
Right.
So I land there on the 17th of October.
Right.
And I meet a friend, and I tell him about okay, this is all what I'm going to do. I want to look at Irom Sharmila and the village Malom. How far is that? And that is when he told me that tomorrow, that is 18th October, Irom Sharmila would be announcing a political party at the press club. So I asked him if he would take me there. And, I was lucky enough that on the 18th, the second day of my arrival, I was standing in front of Irom Sharmila. So I still remember photographing her at the talk. Okay. So this was Irom Sharmila at the press club where she announced her political party Praja. Now at the press club, another journalist saw me, and then she was like, "Hey, who are you? What are you doing here?"
Right.
So I was like, "Okay, I'm a student from this institute, and I'm here to know about Malom Massacre so that I can talk about, what happened today, about why did she step into politics." So on hearing that, she spoke to me about this organization called IFAM. Now, IFAM is an organization formed by the widows of the victim families killed in such extrajudicial killings.
Right.
So this group were actually collecting data from different families, and they were actually continuing the same work that Iram was doing 20 like when the incident happened.
Right.
Now, so she only advised me, why don't I go there, volunteer there, and maybe they would help me finding out more about Malum.
It's interesting here, I guess, because in some ways you went to document and follow Irom
Yeah,
Sharmila,
yeah,
but you ended up going right to the point where she began as well,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah,
And
yeah. So and that's why I was. It was funny because the person whom under Irom was working, I worked under the same person. Like Bablu Laitangong was also guiding her, and he was the one who was telling me about what had happened in these years. So the next day when I reached the court office, I say my name is this. I'm from Calcutta. I'm doing this project just to understand why is she taking part in this election, and I also told them that I want to volunteer for them for whatever
for the
they're doing.
organization, right?
Yeah, and they were really happy because of the fact they said they really needed hands. In the sense, uh, there were three women along with the lawyer and a person called Seher. So there were a lot of files which they have been collecting from 2012, right after Nina had filed the first case. So right now, what they were doing, they were actually consolidating the entire information into digital format, like rather soft copy. So they wanted me to go through all those folders and files and input them in the computer. So the next day when I asked them if they could show me, and even then they did not tell me about the number or anything. They just told me this is the work you have to do. This is how you can volunteer, and you can also volunteer us while we go to different. So there were many families who didn't come to Imphal because Imphal was the only place where the office could have primarily located.
Right.
And there were times when they were going to different districts of Manipur to collect information.
Yeah, and
Yeah, so there what happened was I asked them, so can I join from next day? And that was the same time when I asked them if they could show me or like tell me about Malom Massacre. And I still remember that day, Nina took me to that cupboard, opened that cupboard. I'll show that cupboard.
yeah, I think it's
Uh,
a nice visual for us to get a sense of
yeah. So
your
I'll,
first
so this is
encounter
the
with files.
cupboard which I came across, and the photograph is a bit it's overexposed. So there are years in each shelf. So 2005 to 2006. So and these cupboard had a lot of files. And so when I told them which folder is Malum Massacre, she just pointed out from one of the folder on the stack, and that made me realize about the enormity of the entire thing. And I think that very day I decided that maybe talking about just one day doesn't really make sense right now because the bigger part of India they don't have any idea about these files, and I
Right,
think that is where I started looking at the project not just at Malom Massacre, but 33 years of violence that had taken place in Manipur.
right. I mean,
Yeah,
I think it's quite nice that thank you for showing us kind of this cupboard that we had, you
yeah,
know, where for a lot of us actually, and I think also because of Irom Sharmila's activism, uh, we Malo Massacre became really known, to a certain
yeah,
extent.
yeah,
But at the same time, the everyday politics and the everyday struggles that one has to
yeah,
deal with is still not really understood to a
yeah,
large degree. I mean, in some ways, even for you, your father had worked in
yeah.
Imphal before,
In
and
Manipur, yeah, not Imphal, but
oh, sorry, in
Loktak region. Yeah, yeah,
and so he had a sense of what it was to be over there. And I believe
yeah.
when you decided to kind of pick up this subject, he was not
Yeah, not really
too
happy
sure
with the
about your
fact.
security
Yeah,
concerns.
and he was more like, why don't you go to Shantiniketan and photograph something
Go to
calmer?
the artist village in
Yeah,
Calcutta
like just calm down, like stay near the house. But then my idea was when I don't know, I had little idea about Shantiniketan, but I had really no idea about Manipur. And there was always this thing, this curfew time. There are this, all these things. In some way, when keep people keep telling you don't go, don't go. There is this some age about what is there, why is it so, and then reading about it. And so by that time, when I decided to, I already contacted few friends who had friends in Manipur and asked them, is it possible? So they were like, yeah, you can come, you can, I will look for a house like that. And so it was easy, and I'm glad they accepted, and they were like, okay, fine, go. Like,
right, right.
yeah,
I think it might be also nice, at this point to talk a little bit about your job with the organization, because you were
Yeah.
kind of looking at,
Yeah.
I mean, we've got that visual in front of
Yeah.
us of this
Yeah.
cupboard, filled with
Yeah.
files, and not just that one, 2nd
Yeah.
November file that
Yeah.
we were on the hunt for in that
Yeah.
sense. Uh, and Malom Massacre then became a part of this
Of
larger
the
story.
entire thing. Yeah.
And I mean, so I think if you can share some, just to kind of also come back to the book. The
Yeah.
book has a lot of fragments. I don't know if yeah, of news pieces and also material from files that you have photographed in a
Yeah.
specific manner, because
Yeah.
I believe the cupboard, although has about 700, 800 files
Yeah.
in it, there were still more cases
Yeah.
that were not immediately accessible
Yeah.
to you for
Yeah.
all the documents.
Yeah.
And in some ways, you kind of had this little intervention where
Yeah.
uh, yeah, I think what's
Yeah.
interesting is also when you kind of go up close and then come further away.
Yeah. It's
You
there's
kind
this.
of,
Yeah.
but I think, yeah, I mean, what I wanted to talk about was how you decided to kind of read through these archives, because it
Yeah.
was, I mean, of course, your research material, but
Yeah.
also then material that
Yeah.
from the archives that becomes a part of the book as well. You
Yeah.
want to talk about that a little
Yeah. So when I began this project, I had really less visual reference of what am I really looking at,
bit? Right,
and even for the text that I would like, apart from the book which I had referred to, Mother, Where Is My Country by Anubhav Bhosle,
right.
I was still looking for more text that I can read about such a thing. And I began this job very early, like very early in the sense the day I reached, in the next week I began this work of 9 to 6 or 9 to 5, uh, going to the court, doing this job. Now this job allowed me to open each and every folder and go through each details such as name of the victim, name of the perpetrator, the location where it happened, then the last scene event which was filled by the victim families, and also photographs and evidences and newspaper clippings of that the family member had submitted.
Right.
Now, for me, it was I was going through 20 to 25 folders each and every day,
Okay.
making a note of the names, like, and I had to be like really precise so that I don't go wrong filling up that file which I was assigned for. So
Right.
that made me look at the victim names, the photographs had to be right, and along with that, I kept photographing each folder.
Right.
Like I would switch on the macro mode and photograph small photographs which the family member would have submitted. And most of these documents which were submitted were black and white Xerox newspaper, which also became so, and that's also one of the reasons why I chose to do high contrast black and white to go along with this entire flow of image,
Right.
so that in a way you don't really differentiate between which are the photographs taken by me and which are the
And
photographs
response.
taken from the archive, because these photographs or these evidences which I came across in these folders became the reason how I started reacting in Manipur. So in more ways, I would say all these photographs that I made in Manipur were reactions to all the journey that I made, like meet the office, because nothing was planned. My plan was very simple to get a chance to meet Irom and then find a way to Malom and figure out and then come back and then talk about that. But then I think I this journey made me come across things which helped me shape the book and this my perspective towards the land I was working at.
Right. I mean, again, this was the first time that you had been in Manipur, I think.
Yeah, that was 2016 to end of that year. Yeah.
Right. And I mean, one of the things that we were discussing earlier also was this kind of how you view the city, because suddenly for you the city was was a witness ground, let's say, to the testaments and the file
yeah,
records that you were kind of dealing with all
yeah,
day long, you know. So,
yeah,
I mean, in many ways, it's this scenario where your day is, or your life while you were in,
yeah,
Nepal, was kind of fragmented into these two sections.
yeah,
One where you kind of are literally looking into a cupboard and you're kind of like this data manager and file
yeah,
keeper of all
yeah,
the information that
yeah,
that it contains. And the second bit, when you kind of wrap up from the NGO work and head back
yeah,
home, is
yeah,
what I found quite interesting. I mean, where you were staying, like
yeah,
you described
and
where you were and the impact that might have had psychologically on the work as well.
yeah, yeah, because I was lucky enough to have friends who could find me a house in a building which was so called the tallest building in that area, which so every night I would come back to my house. My house was at the terrace, like a small tiny house made with plywood
Yeah.
walls, and and there were no internet much. There was very less of connection because
Mm.
Manipur kept having such bunch
Right.
of no internet. So after an entire day of going through what had happened, simple stories like my husband went out to buy pan and never came back. Next day I found him dead on the newspaper. So coming back home, finding myself all alone, looking at photographs that I've made the entire day, staring back at the window, and then friends coming at night asking, "You want to go out?" And I would tell them, "These are the locations. Can you take me there?" So it was more like, every morning I would fill my head with things that I would read, and at night I would let it react, and I would try to look at those very places with the incidents that I have read.
Right.
and and I think Manipur is so magical at night because I still remember the first day, the house owner had told me that don't be outside the house after 7 at night, and I think I was never home back by 7 after the first day, and lucky to have friends like that who made that possible, that I could be outside at night, have a vehicle, have certain security, and they would take care of me and then make sure that I come back, attend office. And again, so this cycle kept on happening and these friends in Manipur, they actually started understanding what I was trying to do. So in a way, they became a guide,
Right. It's
and
really
then,
nice to have that
yeah,
emotional kind of circle and
yeah,
safe space where you can share.
exactly. Because after so much of information every morning, I think I really needed someone to, just like ye hua, and I don't know what to say. I like, what country am I living in? And he would go like, okay, calm down. इतना भी कुछ नहीं हुआ है. I've been living it. You have just arrived here.
Right.
So
Right.
wait,
Yeah.
like,
To just put it
and
into context as well.
yeah, and making it feel that yeah, it has happened with my uncle, his brother, and to see the fact that it's so normal out here made me realize and question a lot of things about, okay, what is really happening here
Right.
about the space. And I think that was very much there when I was photographing. And since my camera was also a tiny one, it's a Ricoh GR, so I wasn't really looking at and something. It was more like a reaction to a space, because in bazaars Manipur is crowded. People walk with guns. You getting a touch of a metal gun on your skin.
Not
It's
unusual.
yeah, and then having a big camera around, you look different there. So it's already you are,
An outsider in that.
yeah. So I really knew where am I standing, because I knew that I'm just here for like few days. Like 100 days is nothing compared to
Absolutely.
what they have been, and that was my first time. I was excited, and there are people. So I went to everywhere. These guys said, "You want to go here?" I was like, "Yeah, take me." "You want to go here?"
Right.
"Yeah, take me." And there were times when I've been to places, I know the names, and then I'm reading about these places in the files.
Right.
So it was always like, okay, shit, यहाँ पे ये हुआ, and so it was always like that.
I mean,
Yeah.
one thing that I found interesting was, and I mean, it kind of gave me a sense of how you were feeling or
Mm.
thinking at that point is,
Yeah.
when you're talking, and I said, so where were you staying when you would go? Like, how would you fund that
Yeah.
if you were a kid? And I mean, you were a college student,
Yeah.
and I remember you said that I was at this vantage point, and if you
Yeah.
kind of looked out
Yeah.
from my terrace
Yeah.
at night, like one
Yeah.
thing that I mean, there were two visuals almost that you gave me in that
Yeah.
description, which was
Mm.
one was this howling wind that would
Yeah.
almost
Yeah.
shake
Yeah.
your own room to a certain
Yeah.
degree,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then you walk out and you see these absolutely empty, deserted
Yeah. Like
lanes and
streets
byways
of, yeah.
of an entire city below you,
Yeah.
with a wild horse, with a wild white
Yeah,
horse
so
that
wild ponies are always there, like going like
right,
stray ponies, like roam around the streets
right,
of
right,
Manipur.
right,
So it was, and so I think it was a place where I used to like keep thinking about this place, about at night when you just stand alone at the terrace, look at this calm city, and then you see police vehicles cross every 5 minutes, just to give an idea. Okay, no, you are in Manipur, and so
and
I think that kept this mood always like okay.
hmm,
There was this certain check happening. Always I was in certain, and I was also thinking about like my dinner place was a bit outside my house, so every night I used to have to walk for 15 minutes to get my dinner. And I think those 15 minutes every day I had this thing of okay, if someone picks me up, what would they write in a data collection form? With the right, because all my notes were the last events were like this person went out to do this.
right, yeah.
Yeah, and so I was always in that zone.
And I mean, do you think that um, the kind of, I mean, outside the NGO, the kind of concerns or anxieties that basically were developing in you
Yeah,
had an impact or changed the way you were shooting your own images, not the archival material,
yeah, yeah,
but
yeah, yeah,
your own images to a certain degree, and like what it
yeah,
kind of
yeah, very much. I guess that alone room made that thing happen. Like I was reacting in a way with the files. It wasn't anymore like the way I stay in a city. Manipur, the entire cycle becomes different. There are buns, after 7 you don't really go out at certain
like
parts.
when you were there, demonetization was also
Yeah, and so that was another level. So I was
yeah,
like, okay, how is this a thing right now?
right,
Like, so and seeing how Manipur like reacts to certain things. I still remember there was this incident. It was Diwali in Manipur, and I am on the fourth floor. So the sound of crackers, that was the first time I got freaked out by sound of crackers, because of reading about gunfiring, crossfiring in
right,
a zone like that, and then hearing so many things at a time, like, so. And it was strange because I've never had this feeling before,
right.
and it was there. I felt uncomfortable, like, whoa, you guys, like,
The
okay,
sound basically triggered.
yeah, yeah, the entire, yeah,
And so, I mean, another thing that I know you were doing at that time to
yeah,
kind of make sense of what was going on is maintaining a diary, and I think
yeah,
now is probably a good time for us to maybe talk about talk about your diary, and
yeah,
I mean also talk about the different forms and adaptations that that diary ended up taking
yeah,
uh, till what we see today. And
yeah.
I mean, that would be nice to hear too.
Yeah. So I think during my first stay, like, and I guess the first 110 days became the base of what I'm doing today. Became
Mhm.
on everything is on based on that.
Right,
So during that 100 days, because of less phone calls, and the most honest I would be with my diary, and I would say certain things, and that was more like keeping a check on every day what has happened, of writing down these are the files which are important to me, this file stood out today, why, and I felt like this. So maybe I can
Yeah, it
share.
might be nice for you to share the screen
Yeah.
and show us
Okay.
the.
Yeah. So
Maybe we can see the whole series first, and then kind of maybe move into.
okay. Or maybe I'll just talk about how the diary became the book and then
Cool, cool.
yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
So this is my first entry in Manipur where I talk about I landed here and the airport is small. There are military cars and tanks. The place
Right.
where I'm staying is called the Rims Road, and then I think I'm very, you know, directionally challenged. So I try to map my things out. So I drew a map for myself where this was the RIMS hospital. This is so if you any tell any auto driver key, you have to go to RIMS hospital. That is where my check post was. That is where I was staying for the first 7 days till I moved again. So this diary was actually how I was keeping a check on myself, and which later became uh, the sequencing pattern for my big fat book that I had made. So this mm
You.
so this is the big fat book that I had made. So basically, after coming back, I had made half of this book, which was
From
basically
your
my
first.
first 100 days of
Right.
staying in Manipur. So I had made half of this book, and I had made. I'll just bring that archive.
I think maybe bring them all close by, and then we can. Yeah.
And this was the archive book that I had made, which was basically uh, the archive that I had photographed,
Hmm.
and it was similarly designed to the what you see in the today book.
Right.
So my idea was to have a diary, which is more like a reaction to this book of archives.
Right.
So after I came back, then I met
Part
Andy.
book.
Yeah, it was a two-part book. It was like one archive, one storybook, or rather one diary, one visual diary of my stay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, after I came back, I met Uzma, Andy. Andy's from
Right.
Manipur, and I thought it would be nice to show what I'm doing.
Right.
And that is when Uzma told me, "Why don't you apply for the Al-Qazi grant?" So I applied for the Al-Qazi grant, and I went to Chobi Mela after that. That was right after that.
Right.
There, I got an opportunity to meet Nayantara, where she saw the project and she said, "Why don't you come for the workshop in Nepal to meet Saurabh?" So in that workshop, we had to apply with the already in work progress,
Right. Yeah.
and so that we look about it in the bigger scale. Now, I think a lot happened at that workshop, understanding where I am with the project and not to rush because I guess the day when I opened that cupboard,
Right.
my project almost took a back seat of trying to finish the college for the project for the
Finish the
college
project
that
from the college.
yeah
Yeah.
finishing the project for the college.
Right.
And I think that was where I was like more about what is fake encounters, and I would take more time figuring it out, and that's why this
Right.
journey began.
Hmm.
And I still remember sort of telling me that take risks, but take wise risks. Don't just go out.
Right.
and I came back from that workshop, and I heard that I won the grant, so I was happy, and with that money I thought, let's go back to Manipur.
So now you're up
So
to your second deadline.
yeah, I'm on my second journey in Manipur. But so first month I stayed in Manipur, I could shoot less, but then the monsoons came in, and monsoons in Imphal are the worst because Imphal is a valley. The rest of Manipur are hills.
Right.
So Imphal gets clogged. So you cannot really go out. And during that time, I was staying with a friend who used to stay in the ground floor. Now that house started flooding, and because of the flooding they had to take out their family albums out of it.
Right.
And so the next 2 weeks I was only photographing family albums of that friend, and I was asking other friends if they could bring their family albums to look at a different side of Manipur, which people don't really talk about. And it was Manipuris celebrating birthday parties, picnics, lovers meeting at a park. So it was another side of Manipur which I could never come across, and it's only because of monsoon that they
And it happened.
it came out. Yeah, and so and during also that time, I was in a state of mind that okay, now this is the third part of this project. I think I can make it broader and look. So I also started slowing my pace
Mm-hmm.
of taking things down. By the time my jury came, I presented this fat book, which is basically my
The
two trips,
completed one or the okay, both the
the
trips.
two trips of Manipur.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just share the screen. So I present these three books
Right.
as a go. So one is this fat book.
Mm-hmm.
This one is the archival book, that is a small book that I had made,
Right.
and this one is the family album that I had
Can
collected
we have
over.
a quick peek at it?
The book. Okay, so
Yes.
this is the big fat book. These
Yes.
photographs were not in the final edit.
Yes.
This one, this one. Uh, so
And how
when
big
I
was this book? Sorry, I just wanted to get a sense. The big fat. Oh, I mean the size that you've shown us. It's
Yeah, this
for
one.
people to get a sense of scale.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
it's more like an A5,
A5, a little bigger than an A5.
little bigger than an A5, and like yeah, almost 500 pages.
Right.
Yeah, it's, and then while I was doing this book, I took out two dummies, and that was the time I began different forms of binding
Hmm.
about how do I figure out if when the book opens, is it flat or is it
Right.
curvy, things like that. So my second jury happened. My first jury
Right.
arrived. Danita Singh came for my jury. I
Right.
showed the work and I got a rejury, and it was more like a reality check because of the amount of things I was presenting. It was this fat book, a book of archives, a family album. I thought during that time my intention wasn't to give it a form. It
Hmm.
was more like this is where I stand right now in this whole process. These are the three sections I've created. But because of this rejury, I had a reality check on myself where
Then you
I
started
gave it, yeah, and then I
editing.
brought, and then I was like, okay, let's talk about what I'm supposed to talk about. Like,
Right.
why did I do this project? And then which ended up me making combining the fat book and the archival book together.
Right.
And that thing was a bit easy as well because of the fact that the archival book that I had made,
Hmm.
I started following that sequence,
Okay.
and I started reacting with photographs with that sequence, and that made the my new edit. So this new book that I had made during my rejury, so I had made two edits. One was a very wild edit of, just reacting to archives, and it was
More
a
like
big,
chaos based in terms of
yeah, more like full spread, and I had printed in A3 pages each. So when the book opened, it's a book,
in
it's
like
as
a
big as
tabloid.
A2. Yeah, it's a big tabloid. And then I just stapled it, and it was more like, okay, this is what I want. It is precise.
Hmm.
It's not way more into what I think about the place, but more like a reaction to the core information that had happened there. So
Hmm.
that big A3, I don't have that book with me right now,
Right.
but so it was a big book, A3 book, but it was super flimsy in the sense it wouldn't stand properly, or so you really needed a base to keep the book on, open it and stand. And my idea was to make a big book because to refer to newspaper, how you know when someone opens a newspaper, the person standing behind can look at some portion and maybe come to you and ask, okay, what do you think about it? More like a referral point of discussions. Now with that thing, I also took help of Shini, and Shini helped me make a calmer edit of a smaller calmer edit of it. And I think because of that edit also, I realized that maybe I don't want to be calm in this edit form because of this form of storytelling. I really need to tell people that these are the things that has happened and we had no idea for the past so
Oh,
many
so how
years.
you were approaching it was also like almost like this reactive in your
Yeah, and also, yeah, exactly. I guess Yeah, because that reaction that I had the day when I opened that cupboard, that shock that I'd received, I think, at that time when I was designing the book, I wanted to recreate that shock so that people won't be expecting to read so much of thing happening in their own country. So it was more like that. So that book formed, and then that was the first time after I submitted for the jury, college got over. I created this. Like it's the same book, but
Maybe what I can do is that you can show that book from your end and I can show this so that people can get a sense of
yeah.
like the spine over
So
here
it's
has changed, if I may. And Rohit,
yeah, the spine has changed right now. Earlier it was way more. I used elastics to tie them up more to represent a stack of paper being held together. And that was also the first time I decided that I won't be binding my book, more like a stack of newspaper,
right,
because the documents that I had come across in at the office, the archives, had a huge stack of paper, and it had cut information, newspaper clippings, evidences, which did not really have a sequence, and I, in a way, had to figure a sequence out of it. So,
right,
in order to imitate that search process of figuring out what happened before, and okay, this goes after this, and I wanted that thing in my book, and that is why I kept pushing to the idea of open binding. And you slip it out, you see how the 4 pages react, you slip it
right,
back in. Yeah.
right. And maybe what I can do is that I can also try and run a quick video and we can keep talking about it. Would you want to do that for the final book now or should we discuss the stages?
Anything, up to you.
Okay, let's go into this, and then at the final, maybe we can show you guys a video of the book, so you have a sense of what
Yeah.
we guys are looking at as well. But yeah, so
Yeah.
can we go
Yeah.
back to the when you were experimenting with the different kinds of binds and stitches? I think the little zines that you
Yeah.
made, and
Yeah. This was the first dummy that I had made. So I printed out two different copies of it. One copy I asked the guy to bind it like the usual way. The other one I asked him not to bind it, and I was trying to figure out how to put them together instead of making it into a book. Because the problem what I was having with those books, that the moment you try to open them, they don't open flat, and I really wanted photographs to open flat, and that is why I kept figuring out how do I do this. And this binding also led to today what it is, the open binding today.
hmm,
So
okay.
yeah,
And then from here, should we move to the next um,
yeah.
experiment in bookmaking?
Or maybe I can show all the dummies together.
Yeah, I think this might be
Should I
maybe the
show all the
next
dummies together?
18 would be nice because then you can take us through. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah,
Um, so these are the number of books that I had made, basically. So this is the first three books that I presented for the jury, and this one is another version of this very book. This book of archive, the small one, is another version of this book.
right.
Now, after jury, I moved on to this A3 size book, which had a this color cover, which opened up to a A2 tabloid book, and I made this white book, which went inside this black cover, which is pretty similar to the covers used at the office. And later, after many changes, I came to this one, which became this.
So you went into the book that's labeled as D, which was probably the last stage of your
Yeah,
experiments for this format, right? Like,
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
one more thing I want to do is maybe go back to the first, like book A that you have here, which was your visual diary and book of archives, which is obviously a
yeah,
huge volume. right? And at
Yeah.
some point, thankfully to deadlines and grants
Yeah.
and juries and people who you ended up
Yeah.
speaking with, it
Yeah.
became kind of more narrower in content because
Yeah.
I mean, the first dummy, like we were talking about, has everything, right? It's a bit of a chaos to kind
Yeah.
of navigate and understand
Yeah. Yeah.
your conversation,
Yeah.
within yourself, of course, to a large
Yeah.
degree about the state. And it'd be nice to know, like, kind of what kind of concerns existed for you to go from that wider range of
Yeah.
subjects into kind of narrowing down to say this is going to be probably the first of
Uh,
a series of books that might address
yeah.
your thoughts and concerns.
Yeah. So I've always wanted to make a big fat book about Manipur, and I will make a big fat book about Manipur. But
Yes.
for that big fat book, I think I need to inform people about what happened in Manipur, and I think with that understanding, because I think jury gave me a right check about time, or else I would have taken maybe one more extra year in figuring out. I was more like planning, after jury I'll go back to Manipur, because since I couldn't shoot much because of the monsoon, I would go back, shoot, and then come back. But then, because of that jury rejury phase, looking at this fat object and breaking it into two different kinds of edit, making me realize that no, I want to make much more chaos in a simpler way, much more raw way. I think that process helped to form this fat book. But then in 2000, so I stopped working
Maybe
on
we'll go
in
a little slower. There's a
2017.
little bit of a lag on the video. Sorry.
Internet. Okay.
Yeah.
So from this video, from this book, after I made, I actually took a good 6 to 7 months break of not thinking about Manipur. And then when I printed this book in 2019, that is again when I went back to looking back at this edit, which got broken down, and then I was putting more attention to this set of people
Okay.
than the entire bigger edit. And yeah.
Sorry, I think your screen froze for a slight second, but I mean, we were able to kind of get the last bit of what you were saying.
Okay.
Um, Great, and maybe what one can do at this point, maybe Rohit, you can do this, is again, since you have the screen active, maybe we can do a video of what the book looks like today, uh, or maybe the first book of these looks like today. Let's just put it as that. And
This
have that
one.
video. No, no, I was thinking we'll do the flipped video and
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So okay.
yeah. This is just to help those who have not seen the book. Unfortunately, we are talking about a tangible, like an object that one needs to hold in their hand through a medium that that kind of places it very far away from our physical experience. But hopefully, this will give you a sense of what the book is like. Um, and I think from here, because we're already at about 15 minutes, if there are any questions, we can take those questions,
Yeah.
and then we'll kind of wrap up.
I think it's a long video, 8 minutes.
Ooh.
If you want, I can just do fast forward itself.
Yeah, maybe just a few sections on
Yeah.
that, but we can't see the
Yeah.
video right now.
You can't?
No, I can
Oh,
see your, I can see the folder. I can that you make, but not
oh, you don't see the video? Okay.
you.
Uh, share screen. Open with VLC. Can you see the video now?
No, maybe just minimize that folder. I think that might help us.
Uh, or
Do you want me to try and?
maybe I'll just yeah. I think it would be yeah. Can you see it now?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the screen's frozen on my end. I'm not sure if
Oh,
the rest can see. I'm just
it's
trying.
okay.
Yes.
Uh, Sorry about that.
No, no, no. This is, I think we're
Yeah.
both doing this for the first time, so
Yeah.
figuring it out as um. And do you wanna talk us through some of the elements of, I mean, also the role that text has played over here, because a lot of course, there is material from the file records that you have,
Yeah.
which is both visual and text based, but there's also a lot of news
Yeah.
material that you have kind of inserted within images and
Yeah.
sections, and I mean,
So these were more like references to the way I had received the files, rather. So the researchers, when they had began this work, they had asked the families to give newspaper cuttings of the report of the incident, and these reports were attached with the documents as well. Now, there were times when this report referred to two or three files together,
okay, okay,
and since as I had referred that all folders did not have a given victim photograph, in order to address the fact of the number, I what I did was I photographed those tiny photographs in a macro mode, and then I took parts of their faces so that it represents the larger number, because
right,
only 400 photographs were there among 700, 800 folders that I had.
okay.
Yeah.
And you'd also gone to meet these I mean, whoever
Yeah.
lived within these families,
Yeah,
and
so there were few
have
families at Myanmar. So the families basically who are in the bordering towns or far off districts where every month we would have two such trips with Bablu, Nina, me, and they would go to the families. They would ask what had happened, when it was, and they would talk about incident that had happened 7 years ago, 8 years ago, and this was the first time they're reporting it for the first time. And so even looking and or like understanding what had happened at their place and looking at the situation of that house, like it was all like I had not, this wasn't my plan when I began this work.
right,
And then just to go deep inside to see so many things happen, and also to know about Nina, like I think this project became
right, yeah,
more about Nina as well, because that she has been the person who had taken care of me rather when I was there, like when demonetization struck, and when I was looking for a new house in Manipur, she was the ones asked me, okay, these are the bazaar, let me take you to the bazaar, let me
right,
buy you certain things. And it was more, and later after coming across certain files, I got to know she was the first person to sign
right.
the petition. And I was like, okay, you are one of the strongest person I've ever met in my entire life. And the way you, so it was more like a reaction to her as well. And then to see how she's managing her life with two kids and then coming to office, and then she's worried about how her kid's going to do in the exam. And she's telling me, my younger kid doesn't study at all. And I go like, okay, it's okay, fine.
At the same time, kind of
Yeah, at the
filling
same
up
time,
these
she
15,
would be,
28
yeah,
places
it's
that need
just,
to be
yeah, like
urgently
it's like
heard.
both parallel conversations happening as if, yeah, it's equal. So yeah.
I mean, I'm glad you spoke about Dina, because I really did want to mention her, as she was also, I mean, the first person to file a case, against the
Yeah.
army, which was
Yeah.
a very, very strong step.
Yeah.
Um, at that point of time. And like you're saying, to be someone who has
Yeah.
her own family that she might,
Yeah.
be concerned about, and other security concerns also come up
Yeah.
because you're talking of essentially going against the state,
Yeah.
in such a scenario. And I mean, I did want to kind of talk about how your relationship with her, because I know that she also got to see the book after
Yeah.
it was done, and and
Yeah.
so she also received that,
Yeah.
and what her reaction
Yeah.
was to kind of looking at this document,
Yeah.
that
I think I think she was one of those mentors who would go like, no, this is, I don't think this is working, and she would look at that entire thing, because I did not show her all the edits, because she would go like, what are you showing me?
yeah,
But then those major changes that I had made, she knows about those three jumps: the first, the diary, and then the simpler form, and then this format. So this year, 2019, or no, 2020, I guess. No, I think December 2019, I could send the books, because there was a talk which was being planned in 1st December at Impal last year,
okay,
but due to some problem, they had to cancel out the thing. So my plan was to bring the books there and talk about it.
okay,
But since I couldn't do that, I sent the books to my friends and Nina. So
okay,
I still remember, I think when Nina received the book, first thing she did was she shared on Facebook, and then tagged the other two people who works at EEVFAM, and then she wrote me a message saying, "Thank you for doing this by coming from Calcutta and listening to my part of the story, and then, you know, uh, being being right enough to represent what we have been fighting for, and have a visual form of a record of this entire fight." She was really happy. She gave me a call, and she was like, "Yeah, I'm happy for what are you doing?" And then it's more about like, and then she's like, "When are you coming back? What about the next stuff?"
continue.
So yeah. So I think I'm on that loop again. So I
I mean,
plan
which
to
is
go back.
right. It's a
Yeah,
nice place to kind of get into also, is to talk about, like you said, I mean, the questions, the concerns, the anxieties,
yeah,
the reactions that you've had by just being in Manipur and seeing
yeah,
how the state runs, and how there's almost kind of an acceptance. Like you said, a lot of your friends,
yeah,
when you'd share details of certain cases, and you'd be enraged, and they would just be
yeah,
like, yeah, but that happened to my
yeah,
uncle as well,
yeah,
so it's okay, we don't need. And I think
yeah,
there's a lot of that which is still to be talked about. I think
yeah,
there's so much more material that you
yeah,
have already with you,
yeah,
and of course we've had one, like the first chapter, let's say, of these conversations that you've had with yourself. And
yeah.
um, I mean, are they follow-ups? Are they hopefully more different kinds of follow-ups? Or even in terms of shooting and researching and going back to Imphal or around
Yeah,
there?
so the way I'm looking at right now is, I would say, file wise. Right now I have 1528 cases. So I would want to mention about how I used to know Manipur before reaching Manipur through a band called the Koi, and a song called Bidai Farewell. And it's a song which is basically in Manipuri, but you don't understand the language, but it's so good that you keep hearing to it.
Okay.
And when I asked my friend Vinayak that, do you know anyone from Manipur, he was like, okay, I know about this band. Maybe you can hear the songs to it. And so I heard the songs, and I just randomly write them an email saying, okay, hi, this is Rohit. I'm from Calcutta. I want to do this project. Can you help me out? And 31st December 2016, I remember I was at a hilltop, and one of the band members, Ton, he just walked up, and I was like, hey, you're from Koi, I know you. And then he sat, we smoked a cigarette, and I started talking about what I was doing, and he was happy. And then the next time when I came back, he said, why don't you stay with me? So the way I'm looking at it, and his friends have become my friends, with whom I have began working with them. They are a band, so I make visuals for that band. So in a way, there is this understanding of both of us what we want to say, and I think right now the way I've looked forward about this project is, so there's something called Operation Bluebird, which is also known as India's own Holocaust, which had happened in Oinam, a district in Manipur,
Right.
and very few information is there about that, what had happened in those 69 to 68 days. So Ton, the one of the band members, another two of my friends, all from Manipur, we have been discussing on how to address this. So we would, so right now it's not only the way, not only photograph that we're thinking of, we are thinking of
Great.
all forms of storytelling. My internet is, it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. So right now it's more about expanding the uh, experience of Manipur rather, because since I've been revisiting and visiting Manipur like for the past 3-4 years right now, I have friends right now who are into different fields of art, and we have discussed, and which has led us to this, we can do something together and we can discuss certain things together. And so that is how I plan to address the next part, and also to understand, because this time it was very much from an EEVFAM perspective,
Right.
because of, and then the secondary was friends showing me Manipur. So I'm like going stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, and I'm just seeing like where it takes me now.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have one question from Ratul Chaudhary.
Okay.
He says, my question is, as this project is political, and I guess for some people it's not good news, what are the obstacles you faced in this and how are you handling them? And what your experience has been till now?
Yeah, so obstacles were tricky. So when I was in Manipur, there were people who used to ask me, "Why are you here?" Like there were officers, army officials, and so I would go like, "I am here to understand Manipur," and I was trying to say that I'm trying to understand Irom Sharmila, because I was talking about things which are very neutral, because with my core friend who knew what I'm doing, only them I spoke about my project. But while moving out, I was resembling more as a traveler with a tiny small camera and a tiny bag, and I was like, yeah, I want to go here, I want to go here, and I was just listening to what they have to say.
Right.
So even when I went to different districts, I would say I'm here to see how different it is from Imphal, how the food is different. I would go base like
Right.
मैं फोटो लेने आया, बस देखने आया, and also for the fact that these are information which was hidden from us, and I'm just, what I came across is what I'm saying. Like I got a shock in Manipur, I want to give that shock to the people.
Right. And
So
I
yeah.
think the file format,
Yeah.
and the kind of the size that you chose,
Yeah.
a little bit big, so I have to try a bit too.
Sorry.
Even the kind of images, and I think
Yeah.
you are trying to put that in your
Yeah.
face kind
Yeah.
of reaction.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even among the readers who do have
Yeah.
this. Unfortunately, we've gone up to an hour, and I
Okay.
think
Yeah,
as much as I'm enjoying this conversation again with you, I think we might need to kind of wrap up the talk here.
Okay. Cool.
Uh,
Yeah.
we'll obviously continue to be
Yeah.
in conversation. I just want to add very quickly that Rohit's book was published and launched last year. Um, Along with through the Al-Qazi
Photo book grant.
photo book
Yeah.
grant, and the book is now available for you all to kind of get if you'd like, and we'll try and put in a link or something on
Yeah.
the offset page, or you can obviously write to Rohit
Yeah.
directly, which would be amazing. And if you're interested in the copy, and thank you, Rohit.
Thank you so
And
much, Anshika. Yay.
yay!
Yeah, we did it.
We finally did it.
Yeah.
We've been trying to have this conversation
Yeah.
for a while. I also wanted to thank everyone who's come in and given us this 1 hour and, heard us out. And, thank you so much. I hope you have found this chat interesting, and I hope to see you for our following chats as well. We'll be having them every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday.
Yeah.
It's usually 6 p.m., but for a couple of them, we're at 6:30. The schedule's up on our Instagram and website. And if you guys have any further questions for Rohit or for us, you can write to us and write to Rohit. And I'm sure that he has a lot more stories to tell. Unfortunately, we just have an hour, but I think if you have anything else to say or listen to, then we're happy to be on the other end of that conversation. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.